Seán Kyne. I welcome this debate on the social welfare bill, and I suppose this is our fifth social welfare bill in government, and the first three of those were particularly difficult decisions that had to be made, and unfortunately cuts that were implemented. And I think this is the opportunity we have of starting to reverse some of those cuts and giving back to people. And it's not by accident that this has happened. It's not by accident that we're in a position now that the economy is growing, that the economy is creating jobs, that people are leaving social welfare, that we can invest that money that would be going to social welfare into other benefits within the social welfare system. And as I said, that isn't by accident. It's work and the decisions of the government and the sacrifices of the Irish people. And there has been sacrifices, and let's face it, there are still sacrifices as long as we're still in a position of correction of the books. But as I said, this is certainly an improvement, and I welcome the fact that this bill is before us, and we are starting to give back. Budget 2016 contains 770 million of new spending measures, and of this the government has allocated 250 million. So almost €1 out of every three the government will spend in 2016 is on social protection. The total budget allocation to the Department of Social Protection for 2016 is 19.6 billion, and this is over 38% of all government's spending. So in effect, €2 out of every €5 that the government will spend in 2016 will be on social protection schemes and programmes. And this figure is in keeping with the budgets of the last number of years. It is a colossal sum of money and represents a substantial investment in society. And I think it's always important to keep in mind that the purpose of social welfare and protection, it is a safety net for all. Most of us at some stage in our life will benefit from the social welfare system, and it's important therefore that it is there, that it is properly funded. It supports the most vulnerable in society and enabling people to participate in society. The social welfare system doesn't operate in a vacuum. The system depends on the overall management of the economy to provide the funding necessary to support the schemes and programmes. And that's what I said at the outset, that this hasn't been by accident that we have an extra allocation in budget 2016 to spend some 770 million overall, and 251 million of that on social protection. The country obviously cannot spend indefinitely what it doesn't have. Borrowing will only last as long as it is not sustainable, as it is sustainable. The aim over the last number of budgets, framed in an extraordinarily challenging period of time and difficult period for our country, has been to protect core rates of payments and ensure the continuation of supports for the million and more citizens who depend on the department. It is a cliche to say that it costs money just to stand still, and demographic pressures will drive up the allocation needed just to continue with existing schemes and supports. And this can be seen from the state pension scheme. In a decade, the number of recipients of the contributory pension has effectively tripled. In 2005, there was circa 156,000 recipients. In 2014, some 417,000 recipients. So that is an extra cost. It is the demographic pressures. It's not just within the Department of Social Protection. We see it in other areas as well, in education, where obviously babies are been born. Thankfully, they need to be educated, and there's child benefit costs, and all of that has to be paid for. And as I said, child benefit increases in the population with high birth rates equates to a much increased budget necessary for child benefit payments. A carer's allowance represents recipients have almost doubled in the past 10 years, circa 48,000 in 2005 to almost 95,000 in 2014. And carers perform essential work and absolutely should be supported by the state. And the restoration of this carer support grant is one of the most welcome measures of budget 2014, previously the respite grant. The figures, however, exemplify the growing demands on the social protection budget. But the system, as I said, cannot stand still. Society changes and the needs of people also change. The best time to reform the social welfare system is when fewer people depend on it. There was an opportunity to reform in the early 1990s, or the late 1990s, early 2000s, when our country had a budget surplus. That opportunity was missed, and it has fallen to this government, the current minister, to focus on reform in the context of fewer resources. So specific issues include the focus on identifying and eliminating welfare traps. the introduction of the housing assistance payment, unlike the rent supplement scheme, recipients of HAP can maintain portions of the payment for that crucial time after starting a new job. Although I would say, following a meeting with the management of Galway City Council last Friday, the costs that will now have to be borne by the local authorities, I think for Galway City, was something like 300,000 in additional costs to deliver the HAP payment, which is a concern for them as they deal with budget cutbacks, and in Galway where some 83% of the costs of running the City Council are borne locally rather than delivered nationally. Also providing greater support for the transition to work place. The Back to Work family dividend was an excellent addition to the budget, I think, last year or the year before, enabling a person to manage better with the continued payment of the child portions of the social welfare payment. Properly prepared and thought through measures, including the previous government introduced measures, for example, in existing payments and entirely new payments without putting in place a sustainable funding basis. When the crash came, their economic mismanagement caught up with them. We saw major cuts were put in place. Some schemes were cut not once but twice, while others were scrapped entirely. The measures in this social welfare bill, and the absence of round numbers, the €3 increase in the pension and the €2.50 increase for fuel allowance, demonstrate the responsible and prudent, sensible approach taken by the government and the minister in that area. The restoration of 75% of the Christmas bonus is a measure which not only benefits the recipients but also the local businesses and local economies in every community across the country in that very obviously cost difficult period for families. The continuation of innovative schemes such as the Job Plus, which is directly helping people get back to work. The maintenance of an increase in payment for participants of community employment schemes, the Rural Social Scheme, Gateway, TOOS and others, all important schemes which help people to participate and contribute to communities across the country. There is a need, I think, however, in relation to flexibility. For example, where a graduate who might be underemployed, who might be awaiting a job commensurate with their course or whatever, who might be working in the local corner shop, who, because they're not signing on, aren't able to join other training schemes. And that is, I think, something as things improve that needs to be looked at more closely, because those individuals don't want to be signing on, they want to be working, they want to be contributing, they don't want to be drawing from the state. At the same time, they're being penalised. So I think that needs to be looked at in terms of a greater flexibility in relation to that particular scheme, and I'd hope that the next government will be able to look at that, as I said, as things improve with the country's finances. Ultimately, I think financial independence through work is the best support that you can give anybody. And with the election on the horizon, there's going to be a raft of promises, which I think we have to say, you know, how are they going to be paid for? How are they going to be managed? And it's important when we hear people saying that this is a derisory amount of money, as has been said just now by others. You know, we have to ask the question, where do these people think the money is going to come from? And it's important that for all parties, for Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin, that they are able to highlight exactly where they intend to spend the extra promises on. The emphasis of the government on job creation and support for people in work enables us to invest further in welfare reform and provide targeted, sensible, responsible spending increases for pensioners, working families and vulnerable groups. So I certainly welcome the basis of this budget. I welcome the fact that we are in this position. And when we came here and you know, debating the 2012 social welfare bill at the end of 2011, when we're dealing with this yellow document, we're dealing with cuts, we're dealing with scrapping of schemes. Very different era from where we are now. And as I said, that's not by accident. I'd like to commend the Minister and Minister Burton Staunich for their work in relation to this, and the government collectively, because as I said, it's not by accident, and mainly to I suppose acknowledge the sacrifices that have been made by the Irish people. You know, there's no shortage of things we can spend money on, certainly within social welfare. There's no shortage of worthy recipients, and we'd hope, as the economy continues to grow, continues to improve, that we'll continue to invest in those that are most vulnerable in our society, those that need the support, and also to ensure that we don't have situations whereby people are better off on the dole. And you know, again, we see the start in relation to the carers allowance, or the preschool allowance from next September. Again, many families have to decide, is it worth, or many individuals have to decide, is it worth going back to work due to the cost of childcare, due to the cost of travel to work, for example. So I think we need to ensure that we incentivise work in as many ways as possible. I certainly welcome the back to work dividend that introduced last year by the Minister, and I certainly welcome any initiatives that would make work pay more than being on the dole, than being on social protection. But at the same time, social protection is a much needed safety net for people, and therefore this bill is hugely important. It's a huge amount of money been spent. We welcome the increases for this year's budget and hope that as the economy improves that we won't need to spend as much on social protection in terms of job seekers, but that we'll have that money to spend on other worthy initiatives.
Thank you, Deputy